2, 1. Good evening, Panther fans, and welcome to a very special edition of the Four-Man Rush. I'm your main man, Kevin Avery, a.k.a. 4MR_Country Kev. Once again, got a very, very special treat for you guys tonight. Reached out to this young man. He's been doing big things since arriving here in the Charlotte area. Got a special guest with us here from The Observer. I have Mike Kaye here with us, who's a beat writer for the Carolina Panthers. Definitely been a fan of his articles. I'm sure you guys seen him interacting out there in Twitter world. Just a very knowledgeable, interactive guy, fun-loving, just all-around good guy. And, just glad he's joined Panther Nation here. Mike, say hello to everybody and give them an introduction of yourself.
Thanks, Kev. Well, call me a young man. That makes me feel really, really good because I just shaved some gray out of here a little bit earlier. But yeah, so Mike Kaye, as you say, you gave me the perfect introduction. I got here week 4 of last season after covering the entire NFL for Pro Football Network for the entire offseason. And then before that, I was a beat writer covering the Eagles for 4.5 seasons, and then before that I covered the Jaguars for 3 years. So kind of been everywhere. This is my 3rd stop. I'm hoping it's my last one. No, I've really embraced covering this team, and I the fan base, at least on Twitter, has embraced kind of my coverage. I feel like everybody's been super welcoming, and I love the feedback. I love interacting with fans. I love just chatting. I mean, I'm a talkative guy. If you get me in a social setting, a lot of people will tell you I'm kind of a lot, but no, I appreciate you having me on, and I love what you guys do. I see it on the timeline all the time, and you guys know what you're talking about. And so I appreciate talking to smart people. So thanks for having me.
Hey, well, I mean, we definitely appreciate the kind words here. Definitely just let our Panther fans know a little bit more about you. I know you mentioned you covered the Pro Football Network, which we absolutely love. Didn't know that about you until I did my research here for you. But also it says you graduated from the University of North Florida.
Mm-hmm. That's okay, where Todd Haley played golf.
All right. Well, again, like I say, glad to have you and welcome to Panther Nation. Sorry you caught us during the end of the Rule era, but glad that you're here to help usher in the Frank Wright era. Definitely. All right. So Panther fans, if you haven't seen already, early this morning, and I was definitely glad to wake up to see this, is that we have that Mike dropped a very, very well-written, detailed article about what's going on with the Carolina Panthers behind the scene. It was pretty much going in about the Panthers front office, the collaboration between General Manager Scott Fitterer, Assistant General Manager Dan Morgan, and my favorite guy, Samir Suleiman. I call him a capologist because that's how he was originally introduced to us by Mr. Tepper. But he is the Vice President of Football Administration, Samir is. And, Mike, as I was sitting here reading this article, I was just like in awe of the type of detail that you was able to have access to. But enough about me rambling about it. Tell us, man, what was the purpose and how did this article come to be, man? Because it's a very enjoyable read.
So I was out in Phoenix at the owners' meetings and had wanted to talk to Samir and Dan for a while. Scott and I spoke around the patio area, if you read from my intro, and then I was able to talk to Samir a little bit. Got Dan Morgan on the phone when I got back from Arizona, and those guys filled me in on their process. I think they're a team that obviously you bring up the Matt Rule era. I think they wanted to handle things differently. I think Scott Fitterer is naturally a guy who wants to collaborate. He comes from the Seattle front office system, which is very collaborative. John Schneider is a very open general manager. And he believes that no idea is a bad idea. I mean, I think that's really helpful. And I think when you look at Samir's a guy who isn't just a capologist. I know that's how he was introduced, but he's been on the road for all these pro days. He's helped with evaluations a little bit. He's a guy who I can see becoming a future GM. And then you have Dan Morgan, who's their top talent evaluator. He's another guy who I could see being a future GM. He's extremely smart, former player. He's the guy that really talks about the X's and O's. And I think the three of them have become a pretty cool 3-man band for this team. Now, will it all work out? We'll see. But I think when I talk about like good and bad, I talk about process. Process is a very big deal to me. And I think they've had a good process thus far. Not every move's been a blockbuster. Not every move is going to look like an immediate success story. But I think what this story kind of encapsulates is how they process things as a trio and how they work together. And I think everybody has their niche in the decision-making process, from the trade for the first overall pick to free agency to the pro days to how they're approaching the draft. I think everybody's got a hand in it. And I think the process there is very sharp.
Yeah, Mike, because, one of the things that I liked about when I was reading this article was how you explained in very good detail. And by the way, Panther fans, before I continue, if you're not part of following along on The Observer with Mike, definitely please sign up. I believe I got a promotion or something going on, Mike, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, I believe it's $1 for a certain amount of time, and then it goes up to its regular amount. But we're going to be bringing a ton of stuff that you won't get anywhere else, from detailed training camp notes. If you want to Google me and my training camp notes covering the Eagles or the Jaguars, you'll see that, not to toot my own horn, but my training camp notes are pretty thorough. And we'll have some really fun exclusive content, more insight from around the team and the league. And Ellis Williams, my main dude, has been killing it with quarterback breakdowns from the standpoint of looking at the big four and really dissecting their games. He's done a terrific job there too. So another reason to kind of join in on the fun.
Okay, and Panther fans that are following us along in the chat here, I am putting the website in. You would go to www.charlotteobserver.com, click and sign up there to join it. I believe it's like $1 for the first, month. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's like $4.99 a month after, pocket change, really. So definitely go there, and that way you can keep details with all the, like you said, access to information that you will not find. And Mike, one thing we preach about here with the 4-man rush is the quality of sources, because there's a difference, and we try to let fans know there's a difference between getting information from the national media, such as ESPN, Bleacher Report, those guys, and then, guys like yourself, the local media here, because a lot of times it's been our observation that they'll tend to put out fluff for clickbait. We understand, clicks is where people get their, numbers up from and such. So we definitely always try to encourage our fans to follow all of the local beat writers here that's actually affiliated, actually be around the team and the executives and things of that nature.
Well, I appreciate the local support. I mean, I've only been here for a while. I think Ellis does an excellent job. I think a lot of people on this beat work really, really hard. And I hope that folks are seeing it as much as they can. And I've just really enjoyed being part of the Charlotte Observer.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, we're glad to have you. So as I was saying, as I was going through your article here, one of the things that really impressed me was the decision of how Fitterer, Morgan, and Suleiman didn't want to just settle. They went really aggressive with the idea to put themselves in position to get the quarterback they want instead of having to settle for the quarterback that was available. Could you go a little bit more further into that here? Because I don't want to, just read everything verbatim from your article here, but kind of share some, about that part of your article.
Well, I think early in the process, Dan Morgan, the scouting department, they had a good feel for this quarterback class because they scout them throughout the fall. But I also think when you have a new head coach come in, you get some fresh eyes, and this coaching staff looks at everything. I mean, they've hired some quarterback, passing game gurus in Frank Reich and Josh McCown and Jim Codwell and Parks Frazier, and they've hired a very impressive young offensive coordinator in Thomas Brown. And so once those guys get their opinions in, you go back. It's kind of like free agency. If you're looking to sign a guy and he wants too much money, you let the market reset, and then hopefully you can figure something out. But I think for somebody to come in as a head coach, you have to really take in what they want, what their parameters are, because you're never hiring a head coach to be like, yeah, in 3 years, maybe you won't be here, so the quarterback will be ineffective. You're looking for a long-term answer, especially with the way the Matt Rule era ended. And I think they favored, especially the scouting department, favored a long-term answer, because the way to, and this didn't make in the article, but Samir basically said, the way to win this market is to have a quarterback on a rookie salary, because then you can fill the boxes around him. And I think that's kind of the outlook that they have. They've tried the other way around, trading for retreads, and it just has not worked. And I think for the Panthers, this is the right move for them.
Yeah, Mike, because, if you probably already seen or heard, since the 2018 season, when the Panthers started 6-2, and our fortunes changed that Thursday night game in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh outside linebacker TJ Watt put that big hit on Cam Newton's shoulder, which pretty much started the downward spiral. The Carolina Panthers have started 8 different quarterbacks since then. So it's pretty much been, quarterback purgatory that we've been stuck in. From Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke, Teddy Bridgewater. The list just goes on and on.
Sure.
And I just think that as fans, and you probably seen through Panthers Twitter and other social media, you could feel our frustration, with this cycle. It's kind of like we're becoming the Cleveland Browns of the South, with all these different,
yeah.
We're going through all these different quarterbacks year after year. Now, personally, I felt like we should have stuck with Teddy Bridgewater. That bridge deal would have been ideal. But hey, the last regime was in charge. It is what it is. But this is just something about this energy, and we try not to overhype or oversell. But Mike, it's just really hard not to get excited about the type of energy that Frank Wright has brought here. From the way that he impressed during the interviews by already interviewing a lot of the people that he has on the staff now. I'm sure you was there when he had his press conference. What was your vibe, your feel about Coach Wright?
Well, so coming from Philly, obviously I had a pretty good understanding of who he was. I covered basically the equivalent of his NFL son and Nick Sirianni in Philly for the last 2 years. And then before that, I covered his former boss, Doug Peterson. And I think you can kind of see a little bit of Reich in both those guys. I think Frank Reich's very deliberate. I think he's a very good motivator. I think he's a guy who likes to play not necessarily the good cop role, but he likes to be the enthusiastic guy and have his enforcers. I thought Deuce Staley was an excellent hire, a very good yin to his yang. And I think when you look at the way this team is constructed, they need an influx, of really good coaching, because it's a young team. And I think, the cupboard wasn't bare, but for the guys that they did have who could be long-term pieces, I think coaching was a really important part of this. And I think Frank Reich, and I've been told this by many people, really separated themselves by how he was able to parse out the staff, who his options were to replace potentially Thomas Brown or Ejiro Evero if they get jobs. Like, those were all part of the discussions. And I think Frank Reich's been there before. If he has an owner who's willing to pay to put him in a great position. I think he can be more successful than he was in Indianapolis.
Yeah, because instead of Indianapolis, even though he was let go in the middle of the season and hired by Jeff Saturday, even though he had a winning record, he had a 10-win season, 11-win season. I'll be honest, I was on team Steve Wilkes for head coach. There's no denial that I definitely would have, was rooting for him. But Frank Wright really just won me and the rest of the four-man rush, over with his, attention to detail. The way that, before he went up for his press conference, he went over there and shook the hands of the players that was in attendance.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a real GQ move right there. It's just a refreshness, and it's kind of cool that, the first ever quarterback coming back to coach the team. And it's just a lot to look forward to. Now, one of the smoothest things about this article, Mike, that I loved was how you broke down that while they was at Kentucky's pro day, how they were able to, while observing the pro day, you went into detail of how the deal went down with them to sign free agent wide receiver DJ Chalk, who played with the Detroit Lions last season. How did that information come about that you was able to share about that?
Well, I mean, to protect sourcing, I mean, as Scott talked about it, they were involved. They talked for over a week, and but what I would say is, I think this was a situation where even if you just followed the timestamps on Twitter, you could kind of see that this all was going down in real time while they were at Kentucky. And I think that's kind of a cool glimpse. I mean, it was something that I thought was really cool. They, Samir and Scott both had mentioned that they had negotiated while they were at Kentucky. And I think that's kind of a cool aspect of this journey, right? And I think it shows the process that they take. As Fitterer said, and you have it highlighted here, Deuce Staley getting in on the process and recruiting was also a big deal here. And they ended up with a guy that they really, really wanted. He was a guy that initially they wanted on a multi-year deal. It didn't end up being that way. Chark wanted a multi-year deal. And I think that that's kind of they were able to just get him in and do what they needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, when you looked at his injury history, I know people want to throw the injury-prone label on it, but it seemed like it was just a lot of soft injuries. Wasn't nothing really major, just more nagging injuries that he's had. So and I understand that he just recently had some sort of surgery done that's supposed to finally take care of the ankle injuries issues that he's been having. So, I mean, at 6'4", he's very impressive. I think he was able to put together a 1,000-yard season, I think, with Jacksonville. I just think that he has an opportunity, and I like that he bet on himself, to look forward, because as a lot of our Panther fans know, because we talk about salary cap offering, the Panthers salary cap situation looks pretty nice compared to what has been the next couple of years. I even remember Scott Fitterer mentioned that in his in some of his press conferences as well. So I'm like this: if he does well and has a great year with us, re-sign. If not, there's going to be a lot of great wide receiver free agents out there available. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. So I definitely don't have no problem with him taking a one-year deal.
Yeah, I think it's tough because everything's a projection, right? And the Panthers are very big on paying for role. Like, I get into it a little. I don't want to give it all away, but
right.
With Thielen, I mean, he was paid for his role, and I think there was some pushback on that social media wise, because 3 years, $25 million does seem like a lot for a guy entering the twilight of his career. But I think when you understand the role, reading this, of what they want him to do, it kind of makes sense. And I think Dan Morgan's a guy who can find a way to sell players to his general manager, to the group. And I think that worked out with Thielen and Chark.
All right. Now, forgive me if it was you or was not you, but I saw somewhere on Twitter about a couple of weeks ago where it mentioned that the same agent for Brian Burns is also the same agent for free agent Leonard Floyd, the outside linebacker. I know a lot of Panther fans have been, hoping that we can sign this guy. Now, again, don't want to put you on the spot if there's something you can or can't speak on, but just from a football fan point, how do you feel like a player like that could impact the Panthers if we're somehow able to reach a deal with them?
So that wasn't me, but that is true. They do have the same agent.
Okay.
I do know that there was interest by the Panthers early on. I wrote that in a mailbag maybe last week. But I think that his price range was kind of up there. Now, the Panthers typically believe, and as I mentioned in this article, they like to follow kind of the mid-tier model. Typically, if you win free agency, you're not going to win during the season. It's just too many ingredients put in the pot, and you're not probably building the team the right way. They're not a team that views themselves as being a player away, and I think from that perspective, the Panthers are taking the right approach, right? We talked about processes at the beginning of the show. Now, who's to say down the line as the draft gets closer, maybe Leonard drops his price, maybe Yannick Ngakoue gets some interest. But I do know that at some point during the offseason, they checked in on Floyd. I don't know what the level of interest is now, but I know that, he's got a background with Evero. He's been around Jonathan Cooley, their DB's coach. There's just a lot there to connect, and I think it makes a lot of sense because in a 3-4 defense, the two, as you guys know, the two edge rushers really stir the pot here. Like, that's the advantage, and having somebody who's like Leonard Floyd who can put his hand down in nickel and dime packages when they decide to go 4-man front, who can also cover and rush in space. That could help a lot. They really like Marquise Haynes quite a bit. He's been last year I nicknamed him the closer because he tended to close out games with an impactful sack. Amari Barno is another guy they really like. He's a guy who has unearthly speed. He's like an X-Men at his size. I believe he's 6'6" and 250 and runs like a 4.4. It's wild. But he was a gunner at some point. That's crazy. And I think that's a guy they want to develop. I don't think they're going to push it there. Maybe it's, when you look on day 2, pass rusher is a spot they could look at. But really, to me, as important as pass rusher is, they really need a long-term 5 technique. And they bring in Deshaun Williams, who has a familiarity with the staff. He's a local kid. But I think he needs some competition. They brought back Henry Anderson just kind of to fill out the defensive line room. But it wouldn't shock me if they went 5 technique in either the 2nd-round pick or the 3rd-round pick. And in my most recent mock draft, I had them taking Keon White from Georgia Tech, who's listed as an edge, but in the 3-4, he'd probably be more of a 5 tech or a 3 technique in that regard. I think when we look at I'll have actually a story coming out tomorrow on the Observer about Dan Morgan's outlook on the 3-4 defense, and I think that kind of can give you a little bit of an idea of where they're going with some things. So check that out. Subscribe. Make sure you subscribe through either this mock draft or my story today, and get that information tomorrow, because it's a fun read. Short but fun. It's not this one's, you scroll down it, it's kind of like the Bible or an epic. But you bring up the mock draft. Keon White's a guy who I think is really impressive. He's got a lot of upside. He's a former college tight end who converted to defensive end and has played very well for Georgia Tech over the last couple of years. But if you want to get into this mock draft, Kev, I know how much we talk about these mock drafts off air. Let's do it.
All right, real quick before we do that, you brought up something here. I think Fitterer mentioned something about probably at post-draft that the Brian Burns extension is likely going to be finished. Is that something that you feel confident in?
He didn't say that to me, so I don't want to take credit for that one. But yeah,
Okay.
logically, that's the way to do it.
Okay.
What's interesting, and if you study the salary cap, you'll notice that right now, over the cap has them with $26.7 million. Okay. Next year, they're projected to have a massive cap influx of over $80 million from a projection standpoint. If they wanted to, they could front load a Brian Burns deal, which would make a lot of sense. They rarely do it. But if you can do something like DJ Moore, to me, DJ Moore is Samir's kind of Mona Lisa. It was a perfect contract. They signed it before the market blew up. He got a $19.5 million signing bonus, paid out immediately. That's what made it so tradable, because he basically was starting a brand new contract, 3-year, 61 point whatever contract, without a payout, an immediate payout. And when you look at this free agent market, he would have easily topped it to the point where his leverage would have allowed him to reset the market possibly. And to me, DJ Moore, like I've gotten flack from Panthers fans about this, but to me, DJ Moore is to this point a low end number one. And I think there's only about 10 true number one wide receivers, like guys you can't cover, guys who, from a possession standpoint, you're going to get. Look, he was hurt by the quarterback turnstile. There is no question, and he overcame a lot of stuff. But when you look at what he is great at, it's catching the odd ball, right? Like, he is a guy who makes outstanding catches, but he also disappears for long stretches of games. He's not really a natural possession receiver. So I think the Panthers felt okay with letting him go in this trade, because they ended up, not having to trade away number 39. Said they trade away 61. They don't have to trade away a 2025 first round pick. Instead, they trade away a 2020 second round, or 2025 second round pick, excuse me. And, I think when we look at that, I'm sorry, I'm like, I'm rambling, so I don't remember the initial. So we're talking about Brian Burns, right? So the way to make Brian Burns fit into the cap in a way that I think would be interesting, and look, I'm not reporting anything. This is just my speculation studying the cap. They're in a position where either they have that 20 something million dollars to roll over, which is very cool, or they're considering front loading a deal, or they're going to take their hits with not lowering the cap number and keeping it maybe at 10 to 12 million. And so that way you're not paying for it down the road as significantly as you might.
Yes.
This is a guy who is in his mid-20s. He's already a leader in the locker room. He's developing as a special pass rusher. Is there stuff that he needs to work on? Does he need to be a better run defender? Absolutely. Does he need to continue to mature? Absolutely. But this is a Pro Bowl player who is the cornerstone of their team. We already know they've turned down massive packages for him. Now it's time to reward him, but also not break the bank long term. And I think something that Samir Solomon does really, really well is he plots out this cap space situation very, very well. He's done a lot of void year stuff, which is stuff that I typically would suggest against. He's restructured contracts that I probably wouldn't have restructured. But, I mean, in theory, he has done a very good job of setting this team up now and in the future.
Yeah, and we could talk about salary cap stuff all day, because when all season started, the Panthers were around $8 to $10 million over the cap, and now a month and a half, 2 months later, we're now sitting. I think we got like the second most cap space in the league. I mean, it was just, as a cap guy myself, it was just fun watching how they were able to generate this cap space. Now, I know the dead cap is kind of high once again. We got to bite the bullet on that. But from what I read, I believe that with things where they currently stand, we won't have any dead cap next year, if I understand that correctly.
It'll be very limited, I believe.
Okay.
But, like, dead cap is already spent money. Like, I think there's two ways of looking at dead cap. Dead cap is like saying you've taken out a loan for your car, and now it's like you're selling it, right? And I think like the money's already spent. And so now you still have a monthly payment and you still have to do all that stuff. But it's not like hurting you. The money's already spent. And I think with the way that the Panthers strategize, it's not like they're going after guys who are trying to reset the market. That's fine. Dead money is kind of like, I don't want to say it's like a myth, but in recent years, teams have been willing to take on the dead money on the cap because it's really just a service charge. It's not like you're paying it out as liquid cash. And I think that's an advantage for the Panthers because they've cleared out a lot of that dead money now.
Yeah, definitely glad because we've had some days where we sit back here previous and we're looking at 40, sometimes almost $50 million in dead cap. We like, how did we get here? But thank you for getting that clarity. Sure. Well, that actually transitioned over since we're talking about salary cap here until this upcoming NFL draft. Especially now that we got the number 1 overall pick. And you've seen it. It's basically 3 clicks in the Panthers Twitter. It's the Bryce Young click. It's the C.J. Stroud click. It's the Anthony Richardson click. And if there's a Will Levis click, I haven't hardly seen anybody.
I have. Listen, my opinion on this is all 4 of these guys should be first-round picks based on my text. Right. I think there's a lot of like hemming and hawing about Will Levis. Would I take him at number 1? No, I wouldn't do that. But I would not argue against it if the Panthers had stayed at 9 and drafted him. I think the way that they have taken an aggressive approach, and I wrote that in the story today, and Dan Morgan even said they weren't going to settle for quarterbacks that other teams didn't want. And I think that that's a really poignant point because, look, now they're at 1. They get to take the guy that they feel best about. And I do think it's going to come down to Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. That's my opinion. And I've done 3 mock drafts, 2 since the trade. Both of them, I have them taking C.J. Stroud.
Okay.
So
March 8th and March 20th. Yep.
Yeah. Well, the 8th was before the trade, and I had them trading up to 3 for Levis, which got me a lot of flack. But I think, look, I'm a fan of Anthony Richardson. I think if there's any coaching staff in this league who you'd want to have him guided by, it'd be this staff. But I also think when you look at the turnstile that this team has had, you want to go not necessarily with the safest pick, but the player that you project has the closest, if this guy's floor is an average starter, great, right? And I think when we talk about that, you talk about accuracy and mechanics. And to me, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are those guys. Now, Stroud obviously has had his quirks from a mobility standpoint. It seemed like half the year he was playing a game that nobody else was playing called Beyond the Line of Scrimmage is Lava. And then he just kind of, against Georgia, showed you that he could run. I think his ball placement's terrific. I think when he has a clean pocket, nobody's more accurate in this draft. But Bryce is right behind him. And I think Bryce does so many other things that are special, that are great. But here's my logic between taking Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I have no issue with the height. I have no issue with his immediate ability. But if I'm spending the first overall pick on a quarterback, I better already be planning to give him a second contract, because otherwise I'm fired and I didn't do my job properly. Mm-hmm. And to me, the prototypical size of C.J. Stroud has with Young, my concern is not necessarily about his size. It's more about his frame. And so I'm concerned that maybe he won't deal with the injury histories that Kyler Murray or, Teddy Bridgewater or Teddy's not that small, but he's got a very compact frame. Or Tua. I do worry that, like, if this offensive line regresses and he's forced to be the be-all, end-all, that could turn into a problem. And so I think both picks would be great. But if I'm looking at the long term, and if I'm taking a kid first overall, I want that guy to be my starter for the next 10 years. Otherwise, I've failed.
Oh yeah, definitely, Mike. You definitely brought up some great points with us. At the 4-man rush, we pretty much have said from the beginning we think that when you rank the quarterbacks, we just think Bryce Young, it's just got the best overall resume. I mean, when you think about comebacks, when you think about clutch, when you think about third down, red zone, he on what was considered a down year talent wise, he still put up 32 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
Right.
That's after coming off a Heisman season, and what was easily probably his least talented skill position, at least at wide receiver, that he had, because the year before when they had Michi and Jameson, I mean, they were just lighting everybody up,
Sure, yeah.
But now, me personally as a fan, I'm cool with if we draft either one of the three. I'm being open to it because, as a fan, you just don't know. And I like the way the Panthers front office is kind of keeping everything in speculation, not really tipping their hand as far, we have, one day they're, we believe the Panthers are going to, Bryce Young. Oh, no, it's CJ Stroud. Hey, we just heard that Anthony Richardson has really, and I like that, even with former players like Thomas Davis Sr., speaking of, oh man, I love Smitty at these pro days. He was, he's definitely a soundbite, worth having when he made the mention of you don't want to be the front office that pass up on what do you say, like investing in a Tesla or something up to that effect.
Yeah, you don't want to be the person who passed on Tesla or Amazon, I believe is what I read.
Right, something like that. I'm like, you know what, so. Just me as a fan, I think that the Panthers will be in good shape with either one of the three. And like you said, with this staff, although Anthony Richardson has the most work to be brought up to speed to, I think that once that happens, I think he not easily, but I think he would definitely stand out as the best quarterback of this class. So just as a fan, I'm keeping a open mind on him.
Sure.
But like I say, the fact that we got the right to choose, it's going to put us in great shape. And I just know that there's going to be a tsunami in Panthers Twitter, whoever the quarterback is picked on April 27th. So it's going to be massive. Are you going to actually be out there at the draft?
No. To give you kind of some inside knowledge, we will have somebody at the draft, but typically with beat writers, it's more favorable to be in the building because you get to talk to the executives, you get to talk to the player. At the draft, everything's kind of like it's on the spectacle, right? And so for me, I want to be like near the decision makers. Like I want to understand their process. I've actually never been to the draft because typically what you want to do from a beat writer standpoint is really hunker down on the process, right? And so we will have some representation. The Charlotte Observer will be there.
Okay.
But for me personally, my goal was to, stake out the decision makers.
Yeah, that's cool because I know I got my first chance to go to the draft last year as a fan out there in Vegas. I mean, if you got a chance to go to Vegas and do football, why not?
Right. Yeah.
Definitely had a great time out there. But I know you say that you got here around week 4 last year. Don't know if you crossed paths with the guy, but Bill Voth, who just recently decided to take his talents elsewhere, as he decided, was he's someone that did something that we call Panthers Confidential, and it was kind of like a behind the scenes insight and video, like you said, of the whole process of what's going on. So as I was reading your article, it just felt like that if they continue to do that this year, that it'll be using a lot of the information that you shared in your article, showing pictures of them back in Charlotte discussing things inside the war room, and speaking with the different players and things of that nature. So definitely looking forward to your coverage on the upcoming draft, because with this mock draft here, like you said, you always pick CJ Stroud, but now your second round pick, I think the second round pick is going to be it's probably the more divisive because it's just so many ways we can go. I know that you got defensive end Keon White out of Georgia Tech here, but some fans are thinking cornerback because we're not sure of how Dante Jackson is going to recover from his Achilles. Some are thinking linebacker. Many like Jack Campbell. Some are thinking another wide receiver since we lost. Traded away DJ Moore. It's just a plethora of ways to go. So, but I like this write up the way you said that by switching to 3-4, how Keon White would be a good fit. Is there another position or player out there outside of DN and Keon White that you think might be a possibility a good fit for the Panthers?
I really like Josh Downs, but I think once you bring in somebody like Adam Thielen, who is going to be here for 3 years, that was the plan. He's mostly going to work in the slot. I don't know how you would kind of pull that off. Cam Smith from South Carolina is a guy who has impressed a lot of people. I'm impressed by him. I think he would be huge. He's got a background with J.C. Horn. I think he can play both inside and outside. And then, I think tight end's kind of weird because I feel like you can get a tight end down the road. And I think that's the glory of this class, right? So what's his name? Durham Payne, the tight end from Purdue, blew my mind at the Senior Bowl. Really impressive player, can do both things. He's a really sharp guy. And he's kind of like an old school tight end. He kind of reminded me of Jason Witten. That's what they need. If you talk about what they have right now, they have a guy in Hayden Hurst who's kind of a yak machine, which is what Frank Reich wants. Frank Reich wants to win in space. Tommy Tremble's more of a speed guy. He's going to probably have to compete for a job. And then you have Ian Thomas, who they reworked his deal to basically what his value is as a blocking tight end in 12 personnel. So I think if you're going to add a guy, it's got to be a guy who can do everything and can be a long-term go-to weapon, but also a guy who can block because they're going to be in 11 personnel quite a bit. And so you want a guy, Hayden Hurst is about to turn 30. You want a guy who can theoretically overtake him maybe after 2 years. And I think Payne's a guy that's cool. Dalton Kincaid, if you want to go earlier. Haven't really watched the Notre Dame kid, admittedly. Luke Musgrave. Luke Musgrave's an interesting cat. Deep down, if they're looking for a project to maybe just kind of push Giovanni Ricci and Sullivan and Tremble, Will Mallory's a guy who's got NFL ties, who actually played for Thomas Brown as a true freshman at the University of Miami. I asked him about him a little bit. And then at the combine, I think you cannot overlook the need up front. So the way they plan on using Shai Tuttle is he will probably play nose tackle quite a bit in base fronts. And then he will play either one technique or three technique and 4-3 looks. They think he can move all the way around. They really like this guy. He's not a guy who you were like, that makes sense. A lot of people hadn't even heard of him around the league, from a fan perspective. And so I think it's easy to be insulated even when the guy's in your own division, but he's a guy that they are really high on and really liked his versatility in the way he plays. He's got a high motor. He'll become a fan favorite. He's from the Carolinas. And then they've got Derek Brown, who I actually think it's brilliant that they're using him at 5 technique and 3 technique because his strength is getting upfield. Yeah, he's not a sack guy, but he's a pressure machine. And you don't want him taking on double teams. The whole point of this is to not have him take on double teams. And nobody's really two gapping in this system. This is going to be a one gap sort of hybrid 3-3-4.
Yep, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So, but I will tell you, Deshaun Williams' contract makes me think that they are a work in progress at that other end position, and they should be. And you want a guy who can kind of complement both Brian Burns and Derek Brown. And I think that's what Keion White kind of does. He's got ridiculous athleticism at the position. You could probably put him in space. The whole point of having a 3-4 is to keep people guessing. If you wanted to put him in coverage, I wouldn't do it often, but if he's in coverage like 15% of the time, that's a win for you. And I think he's a guy that makes sense. I'm trying to think of like other guys that I contemplated for 39. But he is a guy that I think fits the mold. He's a versatile player. Like I said, Dan Morgan, I've got a story coming out tomorrow where he talks about scouting the 3-4 and why it's exciting. Darnell Washington, as Matt said, would also be a very, very fun player.
Man, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mike, but man, I was just thinking about him because I know you said someone to possibly, bring along like him in 12 personnel, 22 personnel, 13 personnel, because I'm a fan of multiple tight end sets. I've been envious of New England's playbook for years. Like they believe in fullbacks and tight ends. Playing football in the 90s like I did. That's pretty much what we was. 90% I formation, 21, 22 personnel. Darnell Washington at the combine. I mean, you talking about putting on a show. Like he really. Like what he did to that blocking sled while the other tight ends were struggling was like hilarious. And I'm thinking 6'7", 265 moves like that. We bring in a rookie quarterback. I mean, a tight end is his best friend. I mean,
sure.
Like back in 2011, when Cam came in, we had Jeremy Shockey and we traded for Greg Olsen, which is one of the best fleece moves because we got Greg Olsen for a 3rd round pick from the Bears. So that's why there's a lot of venom from the Bears fans online with us on Panthers Twitter because
I've noticed.
Yeah, we keep receipts because we're gonna bring them up later. But anyway, but man, I know people think he didn't get a lot of numbers because of course Georgia had Bowers, the other tight end on the other side, but Darnell Washington at 39 would when Thomas Brown talking about he want 11 players that are going to be very physical at the front. I mean, if that's the case, this guy definitely fits the bill, not only as a run blocker, but as a pass catcher as well, particularly in red zone where Panthers have struggled over recent years. I mean, that would just be something I would not be mad at the 39th pick.
Well, and something I would add too is I think we have to be careful the way we look at this wide receiver class, right? Outside of a couple of guys, Quentin Johnston, some of those dudes, this is mostly a slot-heavy group. A lot of undersized wide receivers. And while you want as many guys as possible to go over the middle, I know somebody brought up the Boilermaker wide receiver. I haven't watched him yet, to be honest with you. But a guy that I really like, if you scroll on down in the 4th round,
okay,
and he's gotten a lot more buzz lately, is Jonathan Mingo. He's a guy who NFL.com compared to Anquan Bolden. I can literally not think of a better prototype player for a rookie quarterback than Anquan Bolden. And I think he's got the ability to eventually move outside and be kind of that X receiver. He's got good size at 6'2", 220, a 4.46 40. What more could you ask for? He's built like a truck. He's one of those Old Miss wide receivers, those A.J. Brown types, right? And his route running prowess is actually really good, and he has a want-to as a blocker. And so I think there's a lot to work with there. I don't know if he was as productive as you'd like, but he's a guy who I think has tremendous upside. You brought up corner and linebacker. I have them taking Henry Tuatuo from Alabama. I think he's an excellent complement as a 3rd round pick to Shaq Thompson. As a matter of fact, I think he would be an ideal successor for him. And then Alex Austin. Ejiro Evero played a lot of 2 and 4 shell coverage with Denver. I think you want a guy who's a true zone corner to push kind of Keith Taylor and some of those guys at the bottom of the roster. And to me, Austin fits that mold. He's got good size. this was the guy that I wanted to talk about. Wanya Morris from Oklahoma. A very clear need for this team is swing tackle. You've got Cade Mays, who's the favorite to kind of take on the right guard reps while Austin Corbett recovers from ACL surgery. They brought in Justin McCray. He can kind of be the main backup interior lineman. He's familiar with James Campen's system. It's like they've been married to each other in their careers the last few years.
Right.
But they haven't re-signed Cam Irving, and you really, really need a good swing tackle. Plus, I think with Moton getting up there in age, he'll probably be here the next 2 years, but you want a long-term successor at right tackle. I think Wanya Morris is in the 5th round, based on his athleticism and his versatility, make a lot of sense.
Okay. Yeah. As a trench guy, I haven't really focused on is it Wayne or Wanya Morris?
I have it as Wanya Morris, but
yeah,
maybe I'm
okay. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's also a musician with the same name, so I wasn't sure, like if maybe I screwed up there, but I think from my standpoint, this team needs to build depth. They've got a good starting element outside of maybe, they could still probably use another wide receiver depending on how you feel about Terrace Marshall. They're a team that still needs a starting 5 tech. But other than that, I think they're in pretty good shape from a base standpoint. They just signed Kamu Grugier-Hill today. I covered him in Philly. He's more of a special teams ace with kind of like he can play in sub packages. They want to use Jeremy Chin kind of as that dime linebacker, that big nickel corner. So I would imagine he would kind of take precedent on the depth chart. But to me, he makes sense from a locker room standpoint. He makes sense from a speed standpoint. They wanted to add speed at linebacker. And so I think he makes a lot of sense, but they can still kind of upgrade that position. Corner, to me, you need a true nickel corner, and I would not be shocked if they drafted somebody or drafted somebody on the outside to move Dante Jackson in permanently to nickel.
Yeah, we've been saying that for the longest, that Dante Jackson, because when he was at LSU, they used him all over. They had him at outside, inside, they even had him at free safety. Now, I do think he has proven that he can be a solid number 2 cornerback, but I think his best, the best of him, particularly, coming back from Achilles, maybe to potentially, start, maybe moving him around some, and just looking over your mock draft, just kind of, have me think about some that I've, done as well, just to share with you, just something like in the 3rd round. I like a linebacker out of Cincinnati, Ivan Pace Jr.
Oh, yeah, he was awesome at the Senior Bowl.
My God, he was definitely fun to watch on film. The numbers that he put up, the fact that he can play the run and the pass effectively. That film clip of him hip tossing that guard out the way to sack the quarterback is one of my favorite memories I've had watching film. For a guy that's small in stature, because we're talking about maybe 5'10", 5'11", 230 pounds, kind of, in the late great Sam Mills type of size, whatever. But this guy was just someone that just, popped on the screen. And when I think of cornerbacks, this is a very good class to, like you said, get you a cornerback, whether you want someone outside, someone that can play both nickel and outside. This is a very good class. Like one of the guys I like is he's out of Stanford. I think it's called, was it Kaye Blue or something like that?
Yeah.
I like him. I like out of Louisville, Keitrell Clark. He did pretty good at the Senior Bowl as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sidney
Brown's another guy. If you want to add to that safety room, he's kind of like a poor man's Von Bell, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, speaking of safety, I like out of Penn State, Jair Brown. I like him as well.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, he's a good guy. And there's a Charlotte kid that's from Charlotte that actually went to Syracuse, Garrett Williams at cornerback. Now, I know that he's coming back from some sort of injury, but he's someone that, I watched on film, and he's very, very good at man coverage and will come up, play the run very good as well. Does a great job of mirroring the wide receivers. So I just really think that, after we get the quarterback our way, the fun part of the draft for us is going to start because, I know we only have so many picks. So let me ask you this, Mike. In any of your mock scenarios, I know you've shown the original picks. Have you thought about, or you think the possibility of maybe trading back maybe 39 or the 93rd pick to maybe pick up a couple extra picks? You think that might be something? I know I do a mock draft. I do one with the original picks, and then I follow back up doing some trade backs. What do you think about the idea of possibly trading back?
Yeah, this is actually the first mock where I didn't do a trade.
Okay.
I think 39 is the ideal. That's why 39 was so valuable. I think if you can kind of trade back into the mid 40s, early 50s, and you can pick yourself up, maybe an extra a late third round pick or an early fourth round pick and maybe something for the future, you feel good about it. But yeah, that would be the play. I think 93 is kind of a rough spot. I mean, that would have to be a team that is probably further down in the fourth round than you would think, because you want to be able to be at the top of that fourth round on that next day. You want to be at the top of the second round that next day, because that you get an entire day to kind of think that over. Excuse me, or at least with the day 3, you get a night to think it over. You get to regroup and reset. And I think that that's really important.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, hey, this is the fun part as a fan, the speculation, the logic and reasoning why this should be the move, why that should be the move. This has definitely have been one of the more fun all season as a Panther fan. This Frank Wright era is definitely has brought back a lot of excitement and anticipation from Panther fans. Moving forward, I know they released the off-season schedule. I know April 10th, I believe, is when the players, start back, working out, lifting weights, things of that nature. Now, I saw something different this year I haven't seen from previous years. It's like there's a voluntary mini camp right before the draft, the 25th through the 27th.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's league-wide?
New coaches get like an extra week.
Oh, okay, cool. So that's like that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then the draft is that Thursday night. Okay, all right, yeah, that was something I noticed, and then of course the typical OTAs and then the mandatory mini camp. Looking forward. Speaking of camp, are you looking forward to the hot summers of Spartanburg for training camp?
Yeah, I mean, I used to cover the Jaguars, so it's I think I'm a little conditioned, but it's been a while, so.
Right.
Yeah, you'll see me out there, and I hope people come up and say hi, because I don't know what the setup is, but I love getting to meet new people and chatting it up. But hopefully, I see you all out there.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm a truck driver, so I definitely will try to, see if I can schedule myself to come in for a few days to come on out. But I definitely look forward to it. Anything else you want to, share with the fans? Anything that as we wrap this up here, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike_E_KAYE. It's the worst handle in the history of Twitter, but it makes me unique and I enjoy it. And then at that Twitter handle, if you want to follow me on Instagram, I literally just started a professional Instagram this week. I'll have a bunch of content, a lot of training camp coverage, a lot of video, a lot of commentary. And I'm looking forward to sharing that all with you guys. But like I said, if you go to thecharlotteobserver.com, you can check out my opus on the 3-man weave that is, Federer, Solomon, and Morgan and their work this offseason. You can also check out all my mock drafts, check out Ellis Williams' awesome quarterback breakdowns. A lot of fun there and a lot of fun coming.
All right, great. Well, listen, Mike, this was definitely a pleasure and a joy. Thank you for taking time on your busy schedule to talk with us here at the 4-Man Rush, and definitely would like to send you a invite back. Maybe post draft, we can come back and chop it up again to see how 95% of our mock drafts, went up in flames, and kind of like the March Madness brackets do every single year.
I like to shoot for 15% correct. You know what I mean? I'm trying to, 20% is a good day.
Definitely. All right. Well, again, thank you so much again. I know you have got dinner waiting on you, so we definitely don't want to keep a hardworking man from being fed. But on behalf of everyone here at the 4-Man Rush, we want to thank all you fans that's been commenting, been chiming in. Definitely want you guys to check out Mike Kaye on all his different platforms. Definitely follow him on Instagram as well. As he mentioned, he just opened it up. And definitely, again, go to charlottepreserver.com, sign up, read all of his articles, Ellis Williams, and get the insight and the truth from true Panther sources. Connect with the team and none of this fluff that they put out online. All right. Well, hey, this is Kevin Avery, a.k.a. Country 4MR _ Country Kev with a 4-Man Rush. You guys have a great evening. Take care and keep pounding.